The year is 1636. The Dutch Republic stands at the height of its power. Its ports are filled with ships returning from distant lands. Its markets overflow with wealth. Its people among the richest in the world. And yet, in quiet taverns and crowded marketplaces, men gather not to trade gold, not to trade land, but something far more fragile: a flower. A single tulip bulb worth more than a house, more than a lifetime of wages. And no one sees the danger. The story begins decades earlier. Tulips were not born in Dutch soil. They arrived from the Ottoman Empire, carried across trade routes into Europe, exotic, elegant, unlike anything the Dutch had ever seen. Their colors were deep and vivid, but some were different. Their petals were streaked with flame-like patterns, unpredictable, rare, almost unnatural. No one knew it at the time, but these patterns were caused by a virus, a flaw. And yet, it was this flaw that made them priceless. In a society built on trade and wealth, status mattered. And tulips became more than decoration. They became a signal of taste, of success, of power. The rarest bulbs were collected by merchants and nobles alike, displayed like treasures, protected like jewels. But soon, admiration turned into obsession. At first, tulips were bought to be grown, to be admired in gardens. But slowly, quietly, something changed. People began buying tulips not for their beauty, but for their value. Prices began to rise, and with each increase, more people entered the market. Farmers, craftsmen, shopkeepers, not because they understood tulips, but because they saw opportunity. But there was a problem. Tulips only bloom for a short time. For most of the year, they remain hidden underground. So traders did something extraordinary. They began buying and selling tulips that didn't yet exist. Contracts, promises, agreements for bulbs that would be delivered in the future. It was one of the earliest forms of futures trading. And it changed everything. Because now, the market was no longer limited by reality. By the winter of 1636, the tulip trade had transformed. What was once a market had become a frenzy. Prices rose not by logic, but by belief. A single bulb could be traded multiple times in a single day, each time at a higher price. Stories spread across cities, of fortunes made overnight, of men who had turned a single bulb into a small empire. And with each story, the crowd grew larger, louder, more desperate. At its peak, tulips were no longer flowers. They were currency. A rare bulb might be exchanged for a house, a business, a lifetime of earnings. But no one asked the question that mattered most. Why? Why was a flower worth more than land? Why was a promise worth more than reality? Because the answer was simple. It wasn't. And then, one cold day in February 1637, the illusion cracked. At an auction in Haarlem, traders gathered as they always had, contracts ready, money prepared, expectations high. But something was different. There were no buyers, no bids, silence. And in that silence, the market began to collapse. At first, prices slipped. Then they fell. And then they collapsed entirely. Contracts became worthless. Agreements were abandoned. Fortunes disappeared as quickly as they had appeared. Men who had once felt wealthy were left with nothing but paper and regret. The Dutch economy did not collapse entirely, but something far more important did: trust. The belief that the market would always rise, the belief that value could be created from nothing. Tulip Mania became a lesson, a warning, a story passed from one generation to the next. And yet, history does not forget. It repeats, again and again. Each time, different assets, different people, different eras, but the same behavior. Tulip Mania was never about flowers. It was about people. About what happens when belief replaces logic, when greed replaces caution, when the fear of missing out becomes stronger than the fear of loss. In the end, the tulips remained exactly what they had always been: flowers, beautiful, fragile, temporary. It was the market that changed, and the people within it. Because markets are not driven by numbers alone, they are driven by emotion. And when emotion takes control, even the simplest things can become dangerously expensive. So the next time you see prices rising faster than they should, ask yourself, are you investing in value or simply following the crowd?